on November 3, 2002. We have 3 items on our agenda tonight. First item is number 1, 76 Ogden Place West, continuation of a pre-submission conference for proposed addition to the existing home.
I'm just noticing those other pumpkins. They're great.
I came here for that. We both came here. I came for the man. Maybe I was in a different section. Safety. Yeah. Like mass killers. I didn't actually think that those videos were very good.
Good evening. My name is Liz Vanderzant, and I'm the owner and architect of this property.
If you could speak into the microphone, please, so we can hear you.
Try. This is continuation from the last time I was here. I can go through the basic idea of the project again, if that would be helpful. So this is an addition to our house. It's on the north end. It's an addition to house a primary bedroom and bathroom and a partial basement. Let me go to the next slide. So as we discussed last time, there's going to need to be a new sewer connection and a new water supply on the outside of the footprint of the house, given the slab-on-grade condition of the entire house. We'd also like to add a parking area and therefore a curb cut and a small driveway. Now amended from my last set of drawings, I'm showing the front walkway shifted over to accommodate that parking area. We're showing a proposed dry well on the northwest part of the property. We have a couple of trees that we need to take out for this work, which were approved under a permit in the spring. I know that was one of the questions. And so I don't know if you want me to go farther into the plans or if you'd like me to respond to the latest memo.
Well, before we do that, where are we with the right-of-way issue?
Now the parking is compliant. They just have the driveway, and she's showing the one parking spot on her property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That was the biggest.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest issue at our last meeting. So if you look at the plan in the lower left corner, that gray area is proposed permeable gravel driveway and parking area. And there's a dashed line that indicates the 8.5 by 18 foot required parking beyond the property line. And I've tried to lengthen that area as much as possible so that so that the parking could really occur beyond the property line or on the property itself and not within the right of way.
Okay.
Would you like me to go through each of the points in the engineer's memo?
Only if the engineer has some comments.
Yeah.
No, I would just, on the parking, I would just say, I think the size and the shape, it's gonna really kind of promote parking within the right of way. I don't see how a car's gonna pull in, be parallel to the property line and then back out. It seems a bit awkward. I know you have a confined space there to deal with,
We do.
but,
Yeah.
you're showing the space within the property line, but I don't know in practice that it's gonna actually function that way.
I understand the concern. I tried to use a turning radius there that, really could accommodate turning into the space. Also, a previous electric vehicle that we had, the intention is here, as was noted on the drawings, to have an electric vehicle charger and hook up in this spot, and that was really the main reason that we wanted to have an off-the-street parking space. So the last vehicle we had like that had a super tight turning radius and was quite a small car. So I think something like this would be able to accommodate the car on the property itself. That's my hope. I did try, subsequent to the last meeting, very hard to look at all of the other places I might be able to accommodate parking on the site, but given the tree canopy of the existing trees that we don't want to lose, and the steeper slope as you move north on the property, it would cause, we would have to do quite a lot of digging and retaining, and I don't even know if we could even really get a spot on the property.
I completely understand, but I think you have to demonstrate that, otherwise we have to, assume that there's gonna be some parking over the property line, I think, the way it's configured. I mean, if you could show a turning radius, the thing is, you have to show it for a typical car, you can't show it for a special car. I mean, someone else could live there in the vehicle there. Maybe just highlight a couple of the other things. You show the lighting and the EV charger, I think within the right of way, that should be on your property. And I just noticed you show part of the erosion control, the concrete washout within the right of way, that should be moved up on the property, on the plan. And
That's just the temporary box, the
Right.
location for, so
Right.
that should be,
that should not be out in the right of
even
way.
though it's a movable, okay.
Right. And a couple of things on there just said to be determined, like I think the apron and a couple of things. It should be just spelled out on the plan. I think those were the main comments there.
Yeah.
And I think for the record, we still need, I know you received a tree commission approval, but, since subsequently there was new regulations that were put into place, so I just need on the diagram, information as to the total aggregate of diameter trees proposed for removal and the total aggregate diameter trees that are proposed to be planted.
So I have the, plans on here that I'd submitted previously, and it has diameter information for 2 of the proposed trees, not third, but the trees that we're taking out, I think I might have mentioned this last time, are 30 and 36 inches in diameter. And I don't know how I'm going to fulfill, I'm not quite sure I understand the interpretation of the new law. And if this was, the permit to take out those trees was issued already, so we could have.
Why don't you give me a call, and you and Dan can sit and, have a discussion on that as
Okay.
options you might want to consider.
Can I use this as an excuse to have you kind of review for us? Because it's going to come up in another project, what your understanding is of the new regulation?
The new regulations are that, the total diameter of the trees that come down, 50% of that diameter should be replaced on site.
On site,
And if not, there is a payment in lieu of
okay.
the tree replacement.
Wow. I have a question. I mean, this is at the end of a dead-end street. And is the street, does it look like it's going to be continued in sometime in the future? Or, I mean,
No, I mean, I don't think so.
So-
It's a cul-de-sac.
so You only need the parking space for the charger?
I mean, that's our main motivation, is that we would like to have an off-the-street spot to charge the vehicle.
Right.
We have 2 cars in our household, and previously, when we had an electric vehicle, we had kind of a very cumbersome hookup with long extension cords going
Gotcha.
out to the street. I mean, of course, it's nice to have off-street parking in snow conditions and things like that as well, but the main impetus is because of the electric vehicle.
But I was just thinking about the question of backing out into the right-of-way when it's a dead end, you're at the end of a dead-end street.
So
Yeah,
the
if I-
cul-de-sac is beyond our property.
Oh, okay. So
this
people
is
go
the
and turn
last-
around, okay,
Yeah.
Thanks.
There's a large turnaround just past us.
okay, thanks.
If I can just say something, if you don't mind, because I live on the street and I'm very familiar with this property, is that it is at the end of the cul-de-sac. There are no sidewalks, so as far as the village right-of-way, it's not as if there are people crossing in front of that house at all. It is, because of the cul-de-sac and the snow and stuff, it is difficult there in the wintertime if you have a car on the street.
Gotcha.
I don't know how the DPW even got around your car.
And during the pandemic, it was, impossible.
I know that this driveway solution is not perfect, but I do think it's in the village's interest both to encourage EV usage and to get cars off the street. So it may be an imperfect solution, but it does seem like they're mitigating circumstances.
Well, that's fair enough.
So on the north side, if you were trying to put parking area on the north side, it would just be a lot of excavation and,
A lot of excavation. It's a much steeper slope on
Uh-huh.
that side of the property. So whatever we do, there would be a lot of retainage needed and retaining walls needed, and we're close to a couple of trees that are pretty precious to us too, that I
Well,
don't
yeah.
want to infringe upon.
okay, so I think that's a good trade-off. I mean, not to take the trees down.
Well, do you think we're at the point where we can call for a public hearing at our next meeting, and assuming some of the comments that were made by our consultants are dealt with, and the discussion tonight is dealt with, I would move that we call for a public hearing at our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. So,
So, one other housekeeping item, so the Department of State sent back the law for the combined AHRB and Planning Board. So, effectively, in December, you will start being a combined board. So, Dan, is this particular application able to go to AHRB in November, or is it December?
Well, it depends on when the notice.
who are we asking?
It depends on when the notice would have been sent out.
Right.
Like, does the AHRB have to meet in November to effectively set their,
So I don't know if I don't think there's a public hearing requirement for AHRB.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, okay. No. That's fine. Yeah,
Right.
but they're gonna be sitting together.
Right, and they're not, and this
We have a
application is
meeting.
not on for November, correct? The November
ready.
AHRB?
This isn't on as of yet,
Okay, right.
but it,
Get ready.
So I guess the question is, should it be, could it be?
it
for
could be.
November, and
She
then-
could go concurrently with,
Why not? You know?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to throw a wrench in this myself, but I know I have to go back to the zoning board, so I don't know if that's something that would hold us out from.
No, you could still, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you'll be at the zoning board next week, so we should
Yeah.
be.
Okay.
What's in front of the zoning? What issue?
It was, with the steep slope calculations, she received the variance, but it was, wrong, the steep slope calculations, so they just have to change the variance slightly that was given.
Is it, and because I have an oversized, so
That's going
yeah, I have an
Wednesday.
oversized lot, so I was using calculations for the standard zone OF6. I should have been using the sliding scale.
And it's a small difference.
Yes, not much. So you could apply to the AHRB now.
Okay. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
See you next month. Item number 2 on our agenda, 62 Livingston Avenue, pre-submission conference for proposed renovation of existing multifamily residence.
63.
Is it number 63? 63, yeah.
63, I don't know, whatever, whatever it is.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Multi-screen. They could have us sitting together like in Hollywood Squares, you know?
They should. Who gets to be Paul Lind? Dan.
Dad is Paul Lind.
And, Mr. Chairman, just for the record, the next meeting, the public hearing would be on December 1st, for anybody watching at home.
Okay. Thank you.
That's our next planning board meeting?
Correct.
So, pardon my ignorance, but are we a 5-person or a 7-person board?
Fine, I think it stayed 5.
Right, you never changed it.
Okay.
You
And
stayed.
it can, if you find you need more people.
You could always add them.
We
Later-
would be up
later
to
that
us to
night.
expand. Okay.
Yes,
Right, later that night.
and you could add a subcommittee.
Good evening.
Later on
Good
if you
evening.
needed to.
My name is Natasha Walko. I'm here from Opich Architects, representing the application for 63 Livingston. So our client has this property with the object of renovating it, bringing it back closer to the original integrity of the building that's been in place for a long time. And as part of that, obviously, create an addition that more harmoniously balances the main part of the building, eliminates the portion of it that is more current addition, and makes it just improved overall, including renovating each of the 4 floors, which are currently 4 distinct apartments. So I know from the comments there was pickup with the landscape plan, but we do have that, but we'll amend that for next time. So the main part of the work is focused on kind of the left, aside from what's specifically interior, is, so this is the portion that's the addition that would come out. And then we have 3 additions left and right that are secondary to the main body of the building, that then allow us to modify the plan, create something that's much more open and accommodating to modern day living standards. So at the top are existing plans, or in this case, basement and first floor. And then below are the proposed modified plans with outlines in color to demonstrate where the existing is versus what's proposed. For an attic. So you have the
It's a nice
existing,
big lot.
and then the proposed with the
But it's
outline
steep
showing
slopes.
where the distinction is between what's there now and what's proposed.
So just to simplify it for me, it looks
Yep.
like you're adding 2 little sections on the
Exactly.
multi-story sections on the sides.
Yes.
And eliminating a deck in the rear.
We're eliminating a portion of the deck in the rear. A portion that kind of makes an L off to one side, but then goes back to one of the existing units. So we're just maintaining the deck along the rear of the property, of the building.
And it's,
Thank you.
it's 4 apartments total.
It's 4 apartments total. It's currently 4 apartments total.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So, to your point, so the additions, so on the first elevation, top left, so obviously this portion is the core of the building that has existed going back many years. This is clearly not original to the building. So this portion would come out, the red lines delineate what would be added, left and right. And we're keeping it back from the main body of the building and also down, so obviously those are secondary. But the vocabulary of the architecture would be married to what this is. And obviously that's all going to be enhanced. Right, so to your question, the deck currently wraps around to this side at the 2 levels, and we are going to eliminate the portion that wraps around in order to accommodate what we're doing with the plan, and then just maintain it at the rear elevation of the building. The vocabulary of the porch at the core deck at the 1st floor level would remain, and then we're carrying that up at the 2nd floor level in terms of what the balusters are doing. And then also up at the attic level, although we're going to set it back in elevation. So it's going to be a little bit more protected, a little bit more private, that attic apartment.
Are there concerns from the professional team?
No, I don't. Not,
I mean, my only concern are I mean, there's some beautiful trees in the front, but they're giant and they're sort of blocking the front yard, so I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how, under the new tree law,
Right,
just
yeah.
heard.
We had those
gonna be
all the
tricky.
trees evaluated,
Mhm.
and some of them are questionable in terms of their lifespan going forward. And so the recommendation when we had asked about how to deal with the removals was to make our submittal, and then based on comments, and we would address what we might need to add in addition to whatever we've already provided on the plans for meeting the criteria of the tree.
Yeah,
Word.
tree
Ordinance,
regulations, yeah,
that's it.
ordinance. So it'll be interesting to see that.
Yeah, so I don't have the analysis for the diameters, what's being removed versus what
Yes.
is being added. In the landscape plan that we have currently, we do have, right, so we do have some trees fall for one here and here to help buffer some of the parking from the rear deck areas. We're also adding trees here. Here will be a flowering type, and some other trees, additional trees here and here. I don't know what the diameters proposed are, but we'll look at that and make sure that we have it covered for when we come to the.
Yeah, the landscape plan looks good, it looks nice, but
We did have a memo, pretty routine comments. One suggestion we had was a guardrail. I think there's like an 8-foot wall shown where I think parking is proposed.
That's generally good.
And the other thing with the parking, we thought, well, Dan will have to take a look at in terms of what's proposed and what's existing, and the distances from property lines of the building and so forth, just to make sure it's zoning compliant with the requirements under the code.
Right, to the point about the retaining wall. So the portion that's 8 foot is this section in here, where it's at the driveway level, it's a parking spot. And then down below that, at the rear yard, it's a storage space. So it's part building wall, part retaining wall. And there's a knee wall that'd be part of it at the corners, and then a railing that would be proposed to block that open area off.
I'm not sure the engineering plan shows it that way. Maybe take a look at that it's,
Sure.
Coordinated.
Yep. And in terms of the parking, I believe currently the site accommodates 7 spots. We're actually planning to accommodate 8 as part of it. And because of the nature of building siting and the width of the lot, we're constrained in terms of what we can do as far as the driveway. And for the most part, we are following what is existing in terms of turnaround in the front, and then also the areas that are currently allotted for parking kind of left and right of the house as you're facing it.
Yeah, I just think we just have to make sure we identify if any of it needs a zoning variance.
So I think just to piggyback on what Anthony's saying, I think the real issue is just to identify what kind of improvements you're making, because there's clearly existing parking, but if you can provide a little bit more detail in the site plan as to what's existing and what's proposed, and that also includes like the internal circulation and the parking spaces for the residents.
Okay. When you say internal circulation, you mean?
So, and because it's that shoe, right? So, and depending upon where the parking is, are people going to be coming in and out of the same entrance and exit, or is it going to, so a little bit more information on that.
Sure.
Yeah, and specifically what I'm talking about is that the zoning code doesn't allow parking spaces within 10 feet of side lot lines or front curb lines, and I believe the building. So I think it's important, if it's pre-existing parking, then it's up to Dan to look at that. It wouldn't need variance in that case. If it's proposed parking, that it possibly could.
Okay.
That's what I was kind of just calling attention to.
Sure, I appreciate that clarification.
Questions?
Any comments? Any questions?
I think the project looks nice.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Try.
Well, I propose that we call for a public hearing at our next meeting. I move. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Absolutely. Good.
And this will also be an AHRB application at your next meeting as well.
Yeah,
No way.
if they still exist.
I think they is us.
I did this.
Surprise!
Yeah,
You're gonna get paid twice as much.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
barely look at it, say yes. You know, I feel like.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If you always have,
Item number 3 on our agenda
I can do away with this.
is North Mountain Drive referral from the Zoning Board of Appeals for proposed plans to construct a new home at a vacant lot.
We're gonna do a site visit?
Oh, I have done some.
Okay,
On North Mountain,
yeah,
back and forth.
okay.
But I did today twice.
Sorry.
Good
Good
evening.
evening. I believe Patty Steinschneider is hearing via Zoom. Right.
Or if he doesn't appear,
I'll be much more brief, Patty.
yeah. Go for it.
I like that. Thank you.
Go for it.
Sorry, Patty.
No comment.
What, you can't get Patty up? You can't get him logged on?
Okay, so, good evening, Chairman Hunter, members of the Planning Board, and Donna Bell, liaison. My name is Kristen Wilson. It's been a while since I've been in front of this board, but good to see some of you again. I'm here representing the property owner of 0 North Mountain Drive. Along with me is Patty Steinschneider. Michael Stein from Hudson Engineering is the engineer on this project. And as you've read your submissions, you'll know that we're in front of the zoning board for 2 meetings. And they realized that a lot of their issues were actually issues under the jurisdiction of the planning board. So we're here before you to introduce the site plan. There's also LWRP compliance or fee that you will have to render. And we're hopeful that the issues that the zoning board has identified, you will help dive into the details and make sure that we are compliant with those issues. And if there are any other site plan related issues that you would like us to investigate, we'll certainly do that and come back to you. Ultimately, our goal, our hope is that the planning board will feel comfortable in providing a favorable advisory opinion to the zoning board. And so without further ado, I will turn this over to Patty.
Good afternoon. I'm hoping that I can share a screen. Okay, interesting. Okay, are you seeing anything? I'm not.
Yeah.
Seeing,
We can see you, but that's not enough.
Yeah. I'm trying to, it keeps giving me options for recording and I want to just trying to share a screen.
If you were here in person, it wouldn't have this problem.
Where are you?
I'm in Washington for the Senate meeting.
Yeah, it looked like a hotel room.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's this thing called climate change. There's a lot of concerns about it. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I can make this work.
Can you just hold up your screen to the camera? Oh, that's on your, that's right, it's on your computer.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Allow Zoom to share your screen. Yes, I want to do that. Yeah, I think the hotel has a different setup. It's not letting me go through on that. You guys have the drawings that we submitted?
yeah,
Yeah.
we can,
Yeah, maybe you could put those up and I could comment on them?
Yeah, if you refer to them, we can probably look at them.
Yep.
I have this set up in my,
Somebody here share?
do we have a way of showing the submission ourselves?
Yeah, you should be able to share a screen if you've got it on your computer.
You'd have to sign into Zoom.
I am, I mean, I have it up on my screen. I'm wondering if,
I can probably do it. Just give me a second.
Or we can just look at the drawings here too. At the paper drawings.
paper drawings, are you serious?
Yeah.
How about paper? Can you imagine that?
Oh my
Paper.
God.
I know.
Oh, 19th century.
Jesus. This is just-
Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother.
Yeah, you could just, oops,
Is it working?
there you go.
Hey,
Got it.
Now we can't hear you though.
Oh, you know, consider yourselves lucky, I guess.
It's all coming together perfectly.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so now how do I?
You just have to tell us what page you want to look at.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so, I mean, why don't I just kind of walk you through some of the stuff? I mean, I think this is pretty clear, in terms of what the issues are. The main things that we're dealing with are really Michael Stein concerns, which has to do with the fact that we've got significant rock on the site. We're going to be building a house that's going to need to have significant on-site storage. The goal is going to be to capture all of the runoff on the site and control it. We also are going to be doing a tremendous amount of rock removal, which, there are concerns with that because it's noisy and it's dusty. But what we've been doing is, I think Irvington has developed some very good guidelines for that, which I think would make sense for us to follow, which also adjust time and, the way it's operated and having water at the site for cutting down dust. So I think those things are all manageable with the engineering approach as well as erosion and control plan, which Michael will put together. We have a landscaping plan in there, which is not really a landscaping plan. It's really just it's showing the trees that we're going to be taking down, and we're aware of the tree, replacement requirements, and we would have a very extensive landscaping plan because they also would like to have better privacy from the street and screening between this house and any house that's above. And the one item which I think is kind of not an odd one, it's a consistent one in Dobbs Ferry, but given the balance of where the traffic comes from is the impact that building this house will add traffic to the street, which I guess is a concern with the country club. There were comments, I guess, that were made that are included in the letter that Valerie attached. So the idea is whether this board, the planning board, has concerns that a single-family home on a single-family building lot would cause some kind of unusual problem. And if there is a problem on the street with the volume, it was described as being the driveway for the country club, that would probably be better addressed by the country club's scheduling than by a single family house.
Can you do volume?
Yeah. Can you hear me or you can't?
Patty, I don't know if you can speak closer to the microphone of your computer. Maybe that will make a difference. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you can see that my head is closer.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it really? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Very odd. I never anticipated that a hotel would have its own kind of system for things like this. So it makes
Okay.
I ran through that we're going to be addressing all of the storm drainage on site, that we're going to have an erosion control plan, a rock removal master plan that will reduce the adverse impacts on neighbors and concerns with noise. It will be hammered. It will not be, we don't anticipate blasting. We are very experienced with that. 14 of the 16 houses that we built up behind the high school in Irvington necessitated full rock removal for the foundations. So I don't anticipate anything other than the general hassle that is. There will be a loss of trees. I am aware of the changes to the tree ordinance. I've supported that through the Sustainability Task Force. I think it's good. And we will have a very extensive landscaping plan that we will be developing that will be provided for your review. One question I have before I go and talk about the traffic again. If I am understanding what's happening here, I'm assuming that what you guys would be doing is you might, initiate, move forward, have start the public hearing, but I would assume that you would be waiting to make any final decision until your referrals go back to the zoning board and they grant the variance. So I'm assuming this is going to be a little bit of a bounce back and forth. The concerns with traffic that have been expressed, I'm very curious what your take on it is.
Can I butt in here, Patty?
Sure, of course.
I think the elephant in the room is whether the law is even compliant. So,
well,
you didn't address that.
I certainly can. There was a lot of.
I think the decision from the interpretation from the ZBA is that it's not compliant, so they need a zoning variance. So the ZBA because of the site conditions, the ZBA was looking for the planning board to look at the site plan issues, make sure that the single family home can be built, where should it be appropriately placed, and then send a recommendation back to them.
So we're not talking about
whether the lot is compliant, no.
Oh, okay.
The lot is not compliant and they do need a zoning variance.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
Right, but I would like to say it's a 23% area variance that they're looking for. That's a huge area variance.
Well,
So I think we have to be very careful about making
Setting a
sure this is,
precedent for that.
yeah, that, and that this is really a viable project, and we don't end up with the same thing that happened at Judson and Beachdale.
Yeah, no, I've never had an experience
Oh,
like
we
that.
can't hear you at all now, Patty.
Can you hear me at all? You can't?
I think,
There's no sound
Yeah,
pattern.
go ahead.
well, I do want to hear from Patty. I'm just teasing. I'm curious. I mean, I guess I have a couple of kind of thoughts about this. First of all, the zoning board first of all, I want to thank Peter Hoffman for his very thoughtful memo. It's really helpful, and obviously they gave it a lot of thought. I think that's really great. I do want to point out that they said that, nonetheless, we believe it is possible to design a house that will fit on the site and not cause harm to neighboring properties. So I think the issue of it, whether or not it's actually a house can be built here, I think, from my perspective, the answer is yes. But, that's for, I guess, all of us to.
Well, it could be or should be.
Could be, right, could be discussed. I guess it seems to me that the elephant in the room, or the big question in the room, from the comments that are recapped in Peter's memo and so on, in large part have to do with the rock and the stormwater management plan. I want to clarify one thing about because I live next to it. There's the issue of not wanting to repeat the experience of the situation at Beachdale and Judson. I want to say, the Peter's memo implies that there is somehow rock in Dobbs Ferry that is so hard to carve away as to have stopped that project. And I want to say, I do not accept that at all. There is no such thing as rock that is too hard to chip away. And I can vouch for that because my neighbor, who had a all steep slope, decided that he was going to improve his property by basically leveling his backyard. And he did it. And he had to carve out a huge amount of the same rock that we had to carve out for our addition. So I think that the idea that somehow the rock can't be carved out is not supportable. It may take time and it may be annoying, and there are certainly issues about it being on the same rock ledge as the neighbors, and so there are vibration issues and those kinds of things that have to be accounted for. But I don't accept the idea that the rock can't be carved out. There isn't. I think that they really the thing that everyone's awaiting to kind of see is whether or not you can demonstrate that the site can handle the storm water. And I guess when I look at the plans, the one question that I would have for Patty is, I understand people want a house of a certain size, they have a certain program and so on. So maybe let's assume for the moment that the house is the size it needs to be. When I look at the site plan, I guess my question is, has everything else been done in terms of the driveway and the parking area or the patio and the pool to promote whatever level of permeability is possible for
Or retention.
these issues that relate to coverage and the overall level of impermeable surfaces? I guess I would be looking for a combination of those techniques to sort of minimize the amount of impervious surface, and at the same time, I think, even though you say it's coming, it seems like the really big thing is proving that you can retain the stormwater on the site that you're saying you can retain.
Exactly. I agree. That's exactly right. And your point on the rock is point on. It's kind of the line from Jaws. If you can't break it with the hammer you've got, you need a bigger hammer. We've not encountered rock, and we've done some really hard rock excavation that we couldn't take out if we had the proper equipment. The contractor on this is a very experienced contractor with rock removal. So he's got the equipment and the knowledge of how to do that. So I think the real issue, as you pointed out, is drainage. the making sure that the way the rock is being taken out is not excessively intrusive to neighbors. There are things that can be done that makes it better. And I think, very important on this site will also be erosion and sediment control, because you've got steep slopes. That's the whole issue here. If you're hearing me well enough, I'd like to go back to an earlier comment on this about whether this is a lot. Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So this lot was created in 1989 by subdivision by this planning board. It knowingly did so. It was very carefully considered. And in terms of steep slopes, it has the remarkable kind of interesting point that this was actually a subdivision that was being considered at the time they were adopting the steep slope ordinance. So effectively what happened is this came before the planning board in, I believe it was June of 1980. It might have been earlier than that, in 1989. And they were ready to make the final decision. In fact, they granted a preliminary approval before the adoption of the steep slopes, but then they asked that the matter be adjourned until October so that the Board of Trustees could adopt the steep slopes ordinance in September, which would then make this parcel, subject to it. The chair of the planning board, as you all know as well as I, was very knowledgeable on these things. And there was a lot of conversation about the steep slopes and how it was calculated. And this planning board received the documentation that it believed justified this being created as a single lot. And that was filed with the county on December 20th, 1989, signed by Chairman Plotkin. The person who made the motion to approve this lot was actually Steve Hunter.
So I think, but Patty, just for clarification, that was when the lot was originally subdivided. The steep slopes ordinance was updated subsequent after this subdivision plot was filed.
Correct.
And that is the reason why the ZBA says, is acknowledged that as a variance is needed.
Right.
It no longer complies to the current steep slopes regulations.
Well, actually, what that would imply is that there was a change to the steep slopes ordinance.
That's correct.
The only change, because I was involved in the conversations and the writing on that, was that we felt there needed to be a more specific in writing description of how you were supposed to do it. We had building inspectors that interpreted it, the way of measuring it, several different ways. We had one building inspector who said you take the highest point at one corner and the lowest point at another corner, and that's the slope. The way that it was done in 1989 was by, as Chairman Plotkin stipulated during the action, it's in the minutes for the adoption of this, approval of this lot, that it be done with 2-foot contours, and you would determine the slopes by the area within those contours, which is what was changed in 2010 to be the new description of how you do steep slopes. The amount of steep slopes, what a steep slope consists of, none of that was changed. No different requirements of the amounts were modified by the 2010 modification. It was basically the instructions of how you're supposed to do it that got added to the code, so that was clarity with the steep slopes ordinance.
Hey, Patty, I have a question for you.
Yep.
I was looking at the OF2 zoning map, and the lot for this house is actually relatively large compared to a lot of the other lots I see
Yes.
on this map. And, I don't know what the slope conditions are in those, but you could make the argument that a lot, not the majority, but many of the other lots in the OF2 zone are not compliant, and as an argument to.
Right, so I think this board is really just looking at the site plans as
Okay.
opposed to the actual arguments themselves. I think that's where the zoning board
Okay.
is really dealing with that.
But to Steve's point, if I was showing you a presentation, and I'll submit the information to you, we did an analysis of all the adjoining, actually all the houses that were in the radius of notification. Of those, a significant number, perhaps a third, are, not only are they not compliant because of the steep slopes, they're actually smaller lots than the 20,000 square foot requirement. They are also the ones, I think there's one lot that's about 15,000 square foot of gross area, and that has significant slopes. When we did the analysis on the site, of those properties, less than half of those properties, some of which are very large, met the requirements of the steep slopes in terms of having that net area. So it's a very good law. It has good purposes, but this lot was knowingly created by the planning board, and the fact that the measurement got clarified, I don't think changes that this board considered it at the same time that the intent of the steep slopes ordinance was clearly understood by this board. The other thing I'd like to point out is that the Village of Dobbs Ferry actually has two ordinances that pertain to steep slopes. The one, which is the one we're talking about, has to do with net lot area for the purpose of subdivision of land, which I think any of the older members on the board remember when we were dealing with surgical subdivisions.
Excuse me, Patty,
yeah.
can we interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
I think this is all academic for the planning board. I don't think this discussion is necessary. And these are issues that the zoning board is going to have to opine on.
I do agree, but the comment, was made.
Yeah, no, I was out of line by asking that question.
No, I don't mean.
No, that's okay. I think we're concerned with the.
I would never tell you you're out of line, Steve.
No.
We were I mean, it seems to me it's the drainage, handling the
Yep.
water off-site.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but-
I was
And the
gonna
concern of
say,
the rock.
yeah,
No,
the
I
rock,
think-
the rock and the drainage.
And
The rock and the drainage, and I think,
size.
I think I appreciate the clarity with which you presented the steep slope
Yes.
analysis. I think that's really good. So I guess, but the other question I have though, just about the site plan, is whether or not you have done the extent of whatever you think you can
Yes.
do about the patio area that goes around the pool and the driveway area in terms of permeability, and whether or not you're just using conventional asphalt and doing a standard patio design, or whether or not you're prepared to do something that, is more, provide some permeability, although I understand, permeability to what? A rock ledge? But I guess I'm still interested in but I guess that can all be part of your
I
overall
don't think we have
stormwater.
those details yet.
Yeah, well-
It's definitely not fleshed out yet. And
Although-
the problem, excuse me, the problem with the stormwater is not that we talk about retaining the water on site. Problem with that is it can't be infiltrated if of the high ledge rock.
Right.
And so now where do you put the water? So you can hold the water in a tank, so to speak, underground, but it has to be released.
Coltech things.
It can be released in a controlled manner, but where is it going to be released?
There are no
That's-
storm drains, is that correct?
Well,
No,
from what
there
I
are.
saw on the stormwater maps was, the nearest storm drain I saw was, I guess to the south around the bend. There were some catch basins and culverts that went down to the stream through some properties. So, and that was about 350 feet away.
Yeah, there's another one
So
that's a little.
I'm not sure how you could design a tank. You just can design a detention system that'll hold water back, but the problem is,
Right,
and where is it going to go? It has to be released somewhere.
right.
Right, there is
It can't be
another,
released into the ground, so.
there are other catch basins in that area, I think actually a little up the street with a very deep, depth, a big depth to the well, that we should be able to tie into. Michael Stein has already looked at that. He described that to me as being where he would take it. But as Rob is talking about, there's a couple of different things here. One, I'm not a big fan of what is described as permeable paving because I find that it fails after time. So what we recommend instead is something that creates actually a really good, containment system, which is that we're putting the pavers, like brick pavers, on top of a deep gravel base, so that we actually can, with a 40% void, where we can take a tremendous amount of the water and let it percolate in and distribute it over a large area. The reality of the rock coverage here is such that the rate that the water flows off site is probably relatively remarkable. What we have the opportunity of doing is slowing that down and controlling it so that the goal would be not only would we not create an adverse condition, we should be able to improve the way water currently sheds, which has been noted, I believe, in Mr. Hoffman's letter, referring to some of the neighbors who expressed concerns that water coming down from this entire hill, and of course this property is only a very small part of that, washes across the street and onto their property, causing damage and flooding. There are no real curbs on this street. I think that's something that we should consider on this lot. We should be looking at this in a very holistic way of how do we make the water that's already falling on this site be less of a detriment to the neighboring properties.
Right.
Agreed.
We agree with that.
Yeah, there was one other thing I mentioned earlier, which I'm just curious about your take on it, which is the concern expressed about traffic.
It's a single-family home, right?
Right.
Well,
I mean, if there is a problem on the street, which is described by others as the driveway to the country club, which I thought was a little, insensitive in a way. The fact is that the country club has a tremendous amount of traffic. That's if anybody's complaining about traffic, I think it would be maybe the country club could, stagger events or something so it's not the line of cars. The number of cars coming off this site is not going to change the pattern of the street. One other thing to Rob's concern, we are showing a fairly large parking area. We have 3-car garage plus 3 cars we can park on the site. One of the concerns here is that when people have parties and events, people park on the curbs or along the street, which I would like to make sure that this property not have that issue, that they can put 6 cars on the site without a problem.
One thing to look at maybe would be also a sight distance coming out of the driveway.
Absolutely.
But I don't know that anyone else has brought up traffic. I haven't heard that.
It's not like you're going to be backing out. I mean, there's plenty of room to turn around in the proposed driveway.
Exactly. And we are at a nice point on the curve looking down. We've got good visibility in both directions. So, and we can provide, the distance of those and give you a diagram that shows what that visibility is.
One thing I'll just ask, if you're looking at the storm drain up the street to connect to it, like I said, it seems to go through, private property. I don't know if there are easements that should be looked into.
Sure.
The rights to connect to that, and the downstream piping should be looked at least up to the outfall of the stream.
Yeah, it's a good idea not just to put the water in the one end without knowing where it comes out the other end. That's for sure.
Could they pipe some of that water up to the golf course to water the lawns on the sprinklers?
I think that makes I think that's a great suggestion. I think we could work out something to benefit them so they wouldn't be having to take so much of the water from that. We apparently are really having drought issues in Westchester, which I was not really aware of until I got to Washington.
One other thing, retaining walls. We're going to need details of the retaining walls, the heights, and design of those as well.
Absolutely, and we will obviously provide that. One thing I want to mention on that, though, we're showing retaining walls that would assume that what we've got is no rock. Our intention, which we understand that we can't, present to you as a done deal until we've done the excavation, is that those retaining walls would actually not exist, at least not to the extent that we're showing them. If you get the chance, I recommend that you go up and take a look at how we work things out behind the garage that we built at 1 Myrtle. We had substantial retaining walls proposed there. We were able to do the rock excavation so that we exposed the existing rock and let that be the retaining walls, and it came out beautiful.
I think we want to see that information
Sure.
reflected accurately in the site plan, what you're proposing to do.
Well,
Yeah, we actually suggested that a geotechnical engineer take a look at that in terms of the slopes, the rock, the walls, the drainage interaction with the steep slopes. I think that's important here.
Okay.
And does this water end up down by Pietro Place, which is obviously a problem, and we have a task force looking at that?
No, I think this gets it doesn't. This gets interrupted
It's
by
another
the,
leg of it.
Past that already.
yeah, we're in the
Goes down the
northern
gully.
branch of Wickers Creek.
Okay.
Yeah, somehow I think all the water in Dobbs Ferry goes to either Di Pietro Place or that section of Virginia.
Well,
Okay.
you know, I think this normally would call for a site visit by the board. I think the problem with that is the parking there makes it very hard for a group of people to go there at the same time.
I mean, we could arrange that by, two vehicles going up with people, and it would not be that tough. And I think there are a couple of neighbors who might be willing to allow us to park. Allow us to park on their driveway. So I think we could make arrangements of that if you wanted to do it. I do think it's really appropriate, because, you look at these topos and the perception can be, this is a hard one to build on. It's actually a very, very good building lot. What I was going to say earlier, but we got onto something else, was that there are two steep slopes ordinances in the village, and the second one is really about the environment, and that's where you measure all the 35% and greater slopes. And the way we've positioned this on the property, it's a drawing that should be in your packets, is we're really missing the almost all of the 35% slopes. So we've wedged it kind of in a way so that we preserve those. And if we are successful with the idea that the rock can be exposed instead of retaining walls, we'll only be showing that rock, not doing anything to it.
Well, is there interest on the board to do a group site visit?
Yeah. I think it would be helpful. I mean, I'm happy to go by myself, but yeah, I think.
If it's a problem to do a group, I can go to myself too.
Yeah, I mean, well,
So we do it on our own, I guess.
yeah, I mean, that's,
Because they don't kick us off.
yeah,
Now, the owner is a very nice person.
yeah.
You can
Okay.
coordinate with the owner if you want to do it individually or go in groups. I guess you tell us and we'll coordinate everything.
Yeah, whatever works for you guys is good.
Okay, well, all right, I think I'm sure most of us, probably all of us have driven past this, but I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah.
And
Look
I
at
know,
it.
so we'll go back now,
I've gone by it a million times.
yeah, I've gone by.
Would it be useful to stake out something like for the houses, or is that too much trouble?
No, I don't think that should be trouble. I mean, we're going to be doing test pits, I think, on Monday. So what we can do is we can have, when they're going to be going up and locating where those are with a survey. So what we could probably do is put like 4 posts in that would give you some sense of the location of the house.
That sounds great.
And then we can work off of that.
Thanks.
Okay,
So that's happening on Monday, Patty?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I've been told. I'm not in control of it, but I was actually hoping it was going to happen this past week, but I think it turned out it's either going to be Saturday or Monday.
Thanks.
well,
So at this point, we obviously have some more investigation to do, stormwater, sightlines, maybe a geotech.
I think the stormwater, like the credible solution to the stormwater problem seems to be the single biggest thing.
And I think when you start digging the pits, you'll discover how much of the site is not rock.
Yeah, it actually, it wouldn't be the first time that we've assumed that it's all rock and we start digging. In fact, that's what happened over at One Myrtle. We thought we were going to have to hammer out all the rock for the garage. We didn't have to remove any rock for the garage, but we found that it kind of came up quickly behind the garage. So we were able to actually excavate the dirt and expose the rock instead of building the retaining wall. And that's another, I really do think it'd be great if you guys could take a look at that, because I think you'd be pleased with the way that came out.
The other thing that would be helpful would be to show on a larger scale site plan where the existing city infrastructure is. Yeah, I know that on correct me if I'm wrong there, but I think on Beechdale, on that house, the top of Beechdale that was constantly getting flooded out, wasn't there some accommodation made finally for them to hook into the city system?
They did, they put a huge containment system in the backyard.
Right, that I
And then
saw.
if that fails, they have a large pump back there that does pump it back up to the street. you
Right,
know.
so I think it would be, like, part of your presentation should be to show us where, in fact, the nearest city infrastructure is.
Yep.
And whether or not there's some trick for connecting to it in some way to address Anthony's question about, well, you can retain it, but where does it ultimately go? Because it seems like it's not unprecedented now on the top of Beechdale anyway to hook into the city system. So, or the village system, so.
It looked like they could get there via gravity.
Yeah, so I mean, it might be, might
Like
be a little bit more.
400 feet away, though. That
Might be a little bit more expensive. You might have to trench, in the existing road or whatever to get to it. But I think you should represent that somehow.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good idea.
Water feature.
Yeah,
I mean, for the golf course.
Waterfall, yeah.
Yeah, make the backyard one of the tees or one of the.
well,
one of the
yeah,
options.
isn't there a place where I don't want to say the name of the person who I think owns it. But they have a waterfall that you can actually walk behind
Wow,
All
in
right.
Westchester.
sounds good.
Yeah, I've never really been a golf person.
So is there an appetite at the board tonight to set the public hearing for the next meeting?
No.
Or is
Immature?
No,
No.
no,
Okay. So we'll provide you,
This would
I had
be-
to ask.
Just a referral
Yeah.
Obviously, we
No,
have more information to provide to you, but other than the issues identified tonight, doesn't sound like there are any other studies or reports that this board is looking for, at least right now, you're aware of.
I thought the overall massing diagrams looked
Yeah, the plan was fine.
appropriate to me for the scale of the neighborhood. And
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because often we'll be dealing with a neighborhood where somebody wants to build a large house, which is out of scale with the smaller houses around it. Here, I think we could do the other disservice. I think this is a location where we have some of the nicer, larger homes in Dobbs. And, that I think they're planning a house that would really be a good addition to that.
Okay.
yeah, I don't think that's an issue.
Great.
All right, thanks, see you next month.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in
What
favor?
about, what about Donna's last meeting?
That's on the first.
Next month.
Oh, you're going to be there first? Oh, great.
John boy.
Can't get rid of me yet, Patty.
No, I'm not. Donna, I'm doing that from my affection for your help on everything. So I just wouldn't want to have it be unsaid if this was your last
Before
meeting.
we leave, right, there's a couple
Yes,
things we
I'm
need to
sorry,
talk about,
I'm
so.
sorry. Yeah.
It deals with the AHRB. So at the next month's meeting, there's going to be, I'm going to send around ahead of time some procedures that this board is going to adopt as part of its resolution. It's the similar procedures that you've seen, presented numerous times, that you reviewed, that you recommended to the village board, but they're outside of technically the new law that was, that was adopted. So I'll send those around and we can expect to do a resolution at the next month's meeting on that. And then some of it also allows for a little bit more administration for building department to review certain applications.
Meanwhile, I've forgotten, are we doing the little subcommittee thing?
No, right
We're
now.
not. At the moment, we're
The
not.
planning board, yes.
Okay.
you recommended
can,
not to
though,
do
if we
it. You
decide we
can,
wanna do that.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And that would just be another, basically another
Thing to
vote,
be
right?
part of this, okay.
Okay, and what about additional guidance regarding the AHRB?
Yeah, I was gonna ask
So
that.
Tasks.
so Dan and I, we've been meeting, and so Dan's office is gonna provide prints of all the guidelines that are associated with all the various residential districts and downtown districts, so that you'll have that as a reference. If for some reason there is an application that you really want, you really feel that you need some additional expertise, we can bring that in. And then the board is also contemplating adopting they're calling them historic guidelines. I think they're gonna be more like historic standards. And so that will be worked into your review as
These are
well.
the document that
Yes,
Steve Torrey's
yes,
working on?
yes.
Is the Board of Trustees adopting, where does our process relate to the Board of Trustees?
So the Board of Trustees is, the actual historic guidelines will be, that's for the historic districts, that's still pending. The other guidelines are just guidelines at this point, and they're already part of your zoning code. And at this point, the whole AHRB change in terms of jurisdiction and stuff, that's already been completed, that's been sent to the state sent the law back, so now it's technically official.
Okay.
In the resolution, it said that one of the board members needed to have historic training, basically.
In the district, right? If it's in if it's like in the district on what's the name of the school?
No, but
Right.
was that a
so,
sitting board
yes.
member, or is that could be a consultant, or?
Well, technically it's supposed to be a sitting board member. I think right now, it has to have experience in or knowledge of, there's some, and so I can send that out to the full board because I believe, there are potentially people that are sitting here that could cover that.
That's aspirational.
Yeah, and then the
We
next.
get free training if we want it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to speak to it, but we can provide you I can provide you some options, to
Okay.
look at this training.
We're supposed to have a budget for that sort of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
no, I can't
We don't
speak
use
to
it
the
very often.
salaries, but there is some free training out there. But I can send you some information, because there is some free training, there are also some, guides, stuff like
Okay.
that.
Yeah, all right.
That'd be helpful.
We can handle it.
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
sure you will, yeah.
I think we adjourned.
Second.
We already did.
Yeah.